to do this, but I just was talking to some people from the neighborhood who went to breed, so I have to do this. This is my book, like I said, and I'm going to read you an excerpt of my book of what it was like to be in Breed Junior High School. And Breed Junior High School is gone now. It's called the Druid School over there. But I was in that building for 9 years, from the 1st grade to the 9th grade. So it's like burned in my memory, the smell of it. I dream about it still. And I was in those days, when you're in the 7th grade and the 8th grade, they would put a letter next to your name. Like if you were smart and going to college, you would be in 7A or 7B or C or D. And if you're going to like business school or something, you would be in 7E, F, G, or H. My group, 7I, was kind of a containment area. And I had so much fun remembering this when I wrote this book. I'm just going to read this part for my friends here from Lynn who remember that building. And this probably is what you don't want to film to put on cable. So who's ever editing this, we're going to have to edit this part out. But, okay. The floors creaked, the stairs were made of metal. The glass in the doors that swung open to the stairwells had been broken so often that the administration had begun using a special type of replacement glass that had chicken wire inside of it. These windows would still be routinely broken intentionally by the students, but the chicken wire would hold the pieces together and keep them from spraying down the corridor. The desks and the chairs had been there since 1906. They each had cast iron bases that were bolted to the floor. The school administration began replacing them in 1969 with the non-stationary type after the class of 7J, which, by the way, was my wife's class. After the class of 7J discovered that the structural integrity of the classroom floor could be significantly compromised if everyone rocked back and forth at the same times in their bolted down chairs. The desks were made of wood. Each one had a hole in the top right corner that had once held an inkwell. The tops were engraved with witticisms from previous generations of Westland adolescents. These pearls of wisdom were often carved so deeply into the wood that you would have to place your work paper on whatever section had the shallowest carvings so your pencil wouldn't fall into a crater and tear your paper. The boys' room was a testimonial to 19th century engineering. Each toilet had a pull chain that would release water from a holding tank above the stall. There were no urinals. Instead, there was a 6-foot-high, 10-foot-long wall of slate. It was like a pea wall. It had a thin perforated copper pipe running horizontally across the top, and from holes in this pipe, small, steady streams of water sprayed out and kept the wall wet. At the base of the trough the wall was a small trough with a drain at one end. Now, everyone in 7I and 7J had one thing in common: bad grades. But aside from this lack of scholastic achievement, we were a fairly diverse group. There were some good-natured, slow kids who would now be diagnosed with learning disabilities, but in the 60s were just called stupid. And then there were quiet kids who had a home life that was so messed up that they were just not capable of concentration. And also, there was a group of 6 or 7 really tough girls. This was my first exposure to young women whose destiny included significant jail time. They were always late for class. I suspected that their perpetual tardiness was intentional because they so loved to make the big entrance. These young ladies all had a God-given natural talent for drama. Miss Jones, you're late again. Don't sit down. Go straight to the principal's office. Miss Jones ignores him, brushing off his commands like an insect from her shoulder, and sits at her desk. This may be the only few moments this month that Mr. Lewis will have the undivided attention of his entire student body. As a group, we place our elbows on our desktops, lean forward, rest our faces into our open palms, and watch intently as the familiar scene unfolds. Mr. Lewis repeats his command. Before he is half finished, Miss Jones lifts up her desktop and hides her head behind it. I am beside her, and I can see by her face how thoroughly she is enjoying both ignoring Mr. Lewis and the attention it has brought her. He walks to her desk, he shuts the desktop, and in so doing, accidentally touches her shoulder. Okay, boys and girls, now it's showtime. She leaps out of her seat, and with the head-bobbing swagger invented and perfected by 7th grade tough girls, she says, "Don't you touch me! Don't you ever touch me! Who do you think you are?" And he repeats his command for her to get out of his class, and with every eye and 7-eye fixed upon her, she struts to the exit, sweeps a stack of math books off a table en route, slams the door behind her, and disappears into the hallway. We are ready to give a round of applause and a standing ovation to Miss Jones for her performance, but the beet-red face of Mr. Lewis, counterbalanced by a throbbing blue vein at each temple, warns us against it. I remember thinking that whoever had the good fortune to marry the lovely Miss Jones could expect to see a grown-up version of this performance played out upon occasion in a restaurant or two during the course of his marriage.